Hello and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptid, where I'm sitting here smiling, staring at the grid on the screen. This is the grid we are going to be tackling today. It is a completely blank Sudoku grid. The ultimate miracle, if you like. So what's the story behind this puzzle? I have to tell you this. Many of you will be familiar with the Miracle Sudoku, which I just found on the channel. This was the original Miracle Sudoku, just a 1 and a 2 in the grid, a puzzle by Mitchell Lee that I attempted. Really, it was a prank. Mark sent it to me as a prank, and you know, I stared at that grid and thought that can't possibly exist. And many of you, I think, have found this channel from being recommended that video. Well, since then, which was May 2020, about once a month, we get sent a puzzle with a totally blank grid, claiming to be the new and ultimate Miracle Sudoku. And I have to say that in all that time, very, very few puzzles have got anywhere near to the sort of, I suppose, succinctness and beauty that that original Miracle Sudoku had. But this puzzle, which is by Farkov and TopAutism, apparently is a reasonable complete Miracle Sudoku. I mean, complete in the sense we don't get a 1 and a 2 in the grid. We get absolutely nothing. And the rules are reasonably succinct, which, I mean, it's an astonishing discovery. I use the word discovery because it's not really a construction. I mean, Farkov, who I think originally thought about this is all based off a J. Dyer rule set that I did on the channel a few weeks, it was probably only a week ago, which was a fog of war puzzle. And J's puzzle was amazing, completely blank fog of war puzzle. But Farkov realised that by adding a non-consecutive constraint, a unique grid could be constructed. But then, on working with it, discovered that it just wasn't solvable by a human being. There was no good solution path. TopAutism then investigated it further and realised that just with adding just a tweak to the rules, you could create this puzzle, which is the puzzle we're going to have a go at. So it is a completely blank Sudoku grid, and I'll read the rules in a moment or two. And I hope you'll agree with me. I think that they are reasonably clear. I mean, it's amazing. And we've had recommendations galore to try this puzzle because so many top constructors in the world of Sudoku think that this is a truly, truly remarkable puzzle. So this is what we're going to have a look at today in the storm, which is raging outside my window. But what other things do I have to mention? I'm going to start off with some birthdays, actually. Let me start off by wishing a very happy birthday to HIJ12SCH, SCH at the end. I don't know how I meant to pronounce that, HIJ12SCH, but I wish you a very happy birthday and lots of cake, obviously. And then Pauline, your boyfriend Joris, and your friend Emma, they both wrote separately to us. I think you're over there in the Netherlands and it's your birthday today, and they've challenged me to pronounce your surname, which I will attempt. Here we go. Pauline Hugendorn, maybe. Might be correct, but Pauline, I hope you have a brilliant day, obviously. Then David, you've turned 25 today, and I know this because your cousin Irene wrote to us. Matthias has turned 35 today, and that was your girlfriend Finola wrote to us and says that you're getting cheesecake brownies today, Matthias. Oh, that sounds quite good. And then Scott has also turned 35 today, and your wife Lizzie told us this, Scott, and said you'd appreciate a shout out. And finally, a very special little girl has turned 5 today. Caroline, your Aunt Amy wrote to us and said you'd appreciate a shout out. So happy birthday, Caroline. We are so thrilled when we have these young viewers, I cannot tell you. Which reminds me, many of you attempted last month's Patreon reward, which was Alice in Sudoku Land, and mentioned to us that you'd really liked introducing your kids to solving variant Sudoku because some of the puzzles in that hunt were quite approachable. And that got us thinking. And we have, with the help of Ashish Kumar, come up with something rather special, which is a Sudoku hunt. It's a short Sudoku hunt themed on Super Mario Brothers, which is obviously quite a pertinent thing given the film that's come out recently. And with Ashish's help, we've come up with a short Sudoku hunt that is suitable, we think, for children who are interested in Sudoku. Certainly, if they do it with their parents. For older kids, they'll be able to do it without any help. But we're going to try and release this. It's being tested at the moment. It should be released on Patreon in the next 2 or 3 days. So it's something a bit different. We don't know if it'll be popular or not, but we do really, really want to encourage our younger viewers. So that's something to think about and try, we hope. Now, the other thing I've got to mention is correct solvers of this month's Patreon reward. I'm now up to this month, aren't I? And so the following people have solved the whole of the Nightmare on Sudoku Street hunt. Very well done to Nicholas Ole, Mew Rocks, Leon Zhang, Nathan Gilbert, Joseph Costal, Kelvin Graham, and thank you for the poignant email, Kelvin. Ozzy Carl, Jonathan J. Harsh, Matt Boss, Stuart Tierney, Jim Davis, Junda Chen, Michelle Koopmanch, Brett Gator, and John Rice. You all have sent in the correct entry for solving all 19 of those puzzles, and I know that is a serious solving feat, so very well done indeed. Only other thing to say is that Mark has a bonus crossword video on the channel today. He tackles a John Henderson puzzle, and it's quite a difficult puzzle, so if you like your cryptic crosswords hard, check out that video. I'll try and remember to put a link on the screen. But now, let me read you the rules of an Easter miracle, and let us see what Farkov and TopAutism have discovered. These are the rules. Normal Sudoku rules apply, so we have to put the numbers 1 to 9 once each in every row, in every column, and in every 3x3 box. Then we have to mark 9 cells, such that there is one marked cell in each row, column, and 3x3 box. The digit in the first cell of a row, column, or 3x3 box gives the position of the marked cell in that row, column, or 3x3 box. And there's an example at the end, so we'll come back to that if you don't understand it yet. Each digit appears in exactly one marked cell. So there are going to be 9 marked cells, and they're going to contain the digits 1 to 9. Orthogonally adjacent digits may not be consecutive, so if we put a 5 in the middle of the grid, none of those squares could be a 4 or a 6, because that would form a domino in which the 2 cells were consecutive digits, and that's not allowed. And then this is the strange rule. In boxes 1, 2, and 3, so 1, 2, and 3, each digit's position number within a box must equal that digit at least once. So what that's saying is that there must be a 5 in one of those 3 positions, because this is the 5th position, or the 5th cell within this box in normal reading order. So this cell here, or this cell here, or this cell here needs to be a 5, i.e. that digit needs to be in its position. So one of these 3 needs to be an 8, one of those 3 needs to be a 3, one of these 3 needs to be a 6, etc. And that's it. With that rule set, you can apparently solve this puzzle. A human being, even me, and some people refer to me only very loosely as a human being, we should be able to solve this apparently. I don't think it's meant to be that brutally difficult, but we'll see about that. And there is an example now about how this rule set works. So it says, e.g., if row 5, column 3 was a marked cell, let's make it red. If this was a marked cell, then row 5, column 1 would be a 3, I think. I'm going to put 3 and hope I'm right. Yes, a 3. And that's because the marked cell in this row is in the 3rd position. 1, 2, 3. So in the column, this is the first digit in the column, that should be a 5, because this cell is in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th position of the column. And in the box, look, this is in the 6th position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this cell, which is the first cell in this 3 by 3 box, needs to be a 6. So if we could identify that this was a red cell, we would sort of get 3 digits for free as a result of the sort of indexing requirement that exists within the puzzle. That's everything. Now, do have a go at the puzzle. The way to play is to click the link under the video as usual. Now I get to play. Let's see if this is a complete miracle, and let's get cracking. Now, I have to confess that I do know a trick to start this puzzle, and it's nothing to do with this puzzle. It's to do with the J. Dyer puzzle that I did the other day, which had exactly this rule set without the box 1, 2 and 3 thing at the end, but was completely covered in fog. And what we have to do is to realise that in row 1 there is going to be a 1 somewhere. Now wherever that 1 lives, it's indexing itself, isn't it? Because it's saying in this column the marked cell will be in the first position. So there's going to be a 1. So wherever the 1 went in row 1, it will index itself. But the same property obviously applies in column 1. There will be a 1 somewhere in column 1, and wherever it is, from a row perspective, it's indexing itself as the marked cell. But, and this is the trick that I missed in Jay's puzzle, I worked out that this cell was a 1 by some sort of exhaustive testing. But now let's think about it. We can't have a 1 here and a 1 here, because they will both be marked cells, and you're only allowed to put 1 1 in a marked cell, and that's the key. So because we can only have 1 1 in a marked cell, there's only one cell that's going to meet both of those criteria. It's going to be the intersection between this column and this row. So that cell is going to be a 1. Now, there we go. That's the limit of where my experience is going to take me. Now, I've got some ideas as to what we might do with this. I'm thinking we might do some shading, actually, because we can label all of these cells as green, meaning none of these cells now can be marked, can they? Because to have this cell as marked would be repeating a marked cell in a row, and we're only allowed 1 marked cell in each row, column and 3 by 3 box. And any other marked cell we do find in the puzzle cannot be a 1. Now, I seem to remember from the other puzzle as well, there were 2 things I think that I'm remembering. It was quite recently that I did that puzzle. The first is that there's some sort of entropy, isn't there? Yeah. So where do 2 and 3 go in box 1? That's a question I want to ask. And the answer to that is, well, not in these cells, not in cells that lead to indexing of marked digits. Because if that cell was a 2, we'd be saying in this column, that cell needs to be a marked digit, which it clearly cannot be. And the same is true of 3. If that cell's a 3, it's saying that that cell's a marked digit, which it cannot be. So one of these cells needs to index a marked cell in one of those 6 cells, which is going to mean one of these cells has to be a 4, 5 or a 6. And one of these cells has to index one of those, therefore, which is going to be a 7, 8 or a 9. So we don't know the order, but one of these will be 4, 5, 6. The other will be 7, 8 or 9. And therefore, we can, if we view this set as a triple, we can say one of the digits is low, one is medium, one is high. And the same is going to be true here, the same is going to be true here, because we can't, for example, do that, can we? Because that will put a marked cell there and a marked cell there, and we'll have 2 in the box. So we need to space out our low digits, space out our medium digits, and space out our high digits. Now, I'm not sure exactly what that means. So I think I'm going to say the other thing I've remembered about that other puzzle, which is I think that these two cells are restricted, possibly these as well. Because and that's because, of course, these are the first positions in their boxes. So they're doing some indexing for the marked cells in their boxes. But I seem to remember that those two, yeah, you have to be careful. Right, this cell, you might think it could be a 4 or a 7, but it can't be. Let's make it a 7. If that's a 7, then it's saying that the 7th position in this box, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that one, is red. But that gives this cell multiple personalities, because it's got to be a 7 from the box count, but from the column, this is in the 3rd position in its column, so it ought to also be a 3. And there's no way of simultaneously making this cell a 3 and a 7. There are no such things as Schrödinger cells in this puzzle. So these two cells cannot actually be the marked cell in box 2. You can see this one, it would simultaneously be making this 2 and 4. And that's not going to work. It's the 4th position in the box, but the 2nd position in the column. So those two cells, I guess, turn green. I think the same is true of this one. I think it just works the same way. So in this box, the marked cell is in one of those cells. And in this box, the marked cell is in one of those cells. Right, so this cell, which is indexing the marked cell in this row, is a 5, 6, 8 or 9. That cell is 5, 6, 8 or 9. That cell is 5, 6, 8 or 9. There's no possibility there of using the non-consecutive rule. Ah, right, but here's something interesting. So in this box, where do we put 2 and 3? I've said they can't go there. I've just realised they have to go in those cells, and they are consecutive. So if we made that cell a 2, you couldn't put 3 in either of those. So the 2 and 3, which in this box are in these cells, have to be diagonal. They're either going to be like that or like that, because they can't go and form a domino with the other. We have to keep them separated. They're too naughty when they're too close together. Okay, so now that hasn't actually done it, has it? Okay, let's maybe, do I want to highlight these cells? I seem to remember that this cell is less good. It's not as powerful as those two, but I can't quite. So if that was a 2, oh, that's fine. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it just doesn't work the same way. You don't get that same multiple personality formed by these two. You know, if we decided that was the marked cell, then this would be a 2, but that would be correct. It would be correct both from its row and its box. So it sort of works. Whereas it didn't work here. If you make that a 2, it's making this red, but it simultaneously wants to make that red from the box's perspective. One of these is low. No, one of these is medium and one of these is high. Let me think about this, sorry. Okay, maybe it's this other rule then. In boxes 1, 2 and 3, each digit's position number within a box must equal that digit at least once. I don't know how it could do it twice. Maybe I'm missing something there. So, okay, well, neither of those, that can't be a 4 and that can't be a 7. So where is 4 going to index itself in these 3 rows? 4, which can't go there, could go there or could go there. So one of those two is a 4. And one of these two is a 7. That is the world's that's the world's most useless deduction. Okay. 2 and 3 in the top row can't go there. 2 and 3 have to index themselves. Okay. Okay. So one of those. All right. So where does 2 go? I don't know the answer to this, by the way, but where does 2 go in the top row? And there must be a 2 in one of those two positions, because 2 needs to be in its own position at least once. It can only be there once. So one of those is a 2. And if one of those is a 2, one of these is a marked cell. So in row 2, one of these is marked. And because, well, let's do 3 as well. One of these must be a 3, so one of these must be a marked cell. Right, and that caters, doesn't it, for the 2 marked cells that we know must be in this configuration. One of them is going to be due to the 2, one of them is going to be due to the 3, so these are all green. Right, and that's interesting for these digits, which are now a pair, and that's because we now know that the marked cell in box 2 is either in position 5 or 9, and the same is true there. So those two squares are a 5-9 pair. And that means I don't quite. Well, it means that it means all sorts of things. I remember this from Jay's puzzle. Once you get any traction in this, it sort of goes mad, because now, if this is a 5, that's a red digit, but if it's a 9, that's a red digit. So in this column, one of those two squares is a red digit, but the same is obviously true there. So we get this sort of X-wing of red digits. So either the red digits are going to be in those two positions, or they're going to be in those two positions. But surely that means that these two cells have to be a 4-7 pair. Because if we're in this land where these two are red, then this will be a 4 and this will be a 7, indexing the marked position in the rows. But if we're in this world, this will be a 7 and this will be a 4. So that's a 4-7 pair, which doesn't actually eliminate anything up there, look. But we can now say, oh, this is right, this is very interesting. Right. So because one of these cells has to be a marked cell, one of those two cells, which index the position of these marked cells within their box, because one of these is red, one of these is 4, and that is making an X-wing of 4s. What do I mean by an X-wing? Well, in the finished grid, you either get a 4 here and a 4 here, or a 4 here and a 4 here. And the way to understand the implication of an X-wing is to ask a facetious question, which is how many 4s are you anticipating there being in this column overall? And the answer hopefully you'll give me is there's going to be 1 4 in this column and 1 4 in this column. So in these two columns together, there will be 2 4s. But we've just said that there must be a 4 in one of these two cells, and there must be a 4 in one of those two cells. So these 4 cells contain 2 4s, and therefore there are no more 4s in the rest of this column. I don't really have a good way of marking this, but no, there are no 4s in any of those cells, which some of them we could see there were no 4s, but it's at least interesting to know that these aren't 4s and these aren't 4s. So, yeah, and the same is true those 2 squares. One of these 2 squares must be a 7 because one of these must be red, and that's creating an x-wing on 7s in exactly the same way. This is bonkers. This is bonkers, but it's not actually... It's not actually getting me anywhere. I've only got 1 digit in the grid so far. But I bet you we can do... I bet you there's some way that we can extrapolate. Oh, okay. Well, one of those 2 squares is red in this row, so that square can only be, I want to say 5 or 8, so that's not 6 or 9. And that square must be either... Oh, I've got this. I know what's going on. I've got you. Got you. I've got you, Farkov and TopAutism. I've noticed something that's quite interesting. Right. Okay. So we can write these digits in, I think. In fact, I definitely can. I can do it in 2 ways. Right. How could that be a 9? Let's start with that question. If that cell is a 9, which is one of its only 2 options, where would the 9 go in boxes 1, 2 and 3 and be in its correct position? It couldn't go there, there or there. So that cannot be a 9. But I think exactly the same logic applies to 5 here. If this is a 5, you can't put a 5 there, there or there, so it doesn't work. So this square becomes a 6, and this square cannot now be a 5. Well, we said it couldn't be a 5 because of the funny rule, but it now also can't be a 5 because it would be next to a 6. So that's an 8. And therefore, things are going to kick off, aren't they? Because now this cell is red, which means these 2 cells are most certainly not red. They are green, which means this square is red, indexed by this, which means that's a 3, that's a 2, so that does my... This is now 9, because it's the 9th position. This is a 5, this is the 5th position. And these 2 are going to go mad. Well, not mad, but... Oh, yes. In fact, there's other... Yeah, well, sort of mad. That's got to... It's the 9th cell in this column that's now marked. So that becomes marked. That's unmarked. All of these cells now have to be rendered green. That one we can correct like this. This one. All of these have got to be green. That's the 5th position in this column, so that one turns red. All of these cells become green. This is in the 4th position of its box, which unwinds my X-wing. We could also have seen the X-wing was unwound because you can't put 5 next to a 4 up here. And this is in the 7th position, so that corrects the other X-wing. That's in the 7th position in its row. This is in the 4th position. Can we keep this going now? I don't know. Maybe. What about... Well, that can't be a 4 because... Well, if this was red, that would need to be a 4 for the 4th position in its column. It can't be, so that's got to be a 6, which means that's got to be red. This has got to be green. So now these turn green. One of these 2 is red, which means this digit is a 2 or a 3. It's not affected by the fact it sees 6 and 7, so we can't quite do that. Where do we put 7 in this box? The answer is not next to 6 because it would be in a naughty domino, so the 7 goes there. And oh, I suppose this cell is in the, oh look, I can do this one and this one. This is in the 5th position of its row, and that's in the 8th position of its box. Oh, and now where do I put 8 in this box? Not next to 7 and not there. So that's 8. This box needs 1. Oh, I thought I'd broken it. Oh, I couldn't see the 9 for some reason that's beyond me. Right, but we haven't broken it because the 9 is in the box. 1, 2. Oh, where does 5 go in the box? It's got to go there. So these two squares have got to be a 1, 2 pair. 5 is now not allowed. Oh, 5 I can place in row 2 because it can't be next to 4. I love this sort of thing. 5 goes here. We know the 2 and the 3 are not together. They've got to be kept apart. So 9 in the box now goes here by Sudoku. These two squares are 4 and a 6. We can't put the 4 next to, no, not 4. Well, 4 and 7 actually. We can't put the 4 though next to the 5 anyway. So this is 4, 7. That's fixing those two squares as red, which means all of these become green, and we've placed all of our marked cells. Look at that. And that's a 3 as a result of this. These two squares have got to be 2 and 9. Oh, Bobbin. Oh no, we can do the 2 by reference to the marked cell thing. And then that square's got to be a 6 because that's the 6th position. And all of a sudden, we can't put 3 next to 4. So that's a 2, that's a 3, that's a 2, that's a 1. This square here is an 8 by the power of Grayskull and the power of that being in its 8th position. These two squares are 1 and something. 1 and, oh, I was about to say 1 and 7. 1 and 4. Oh, no, I can't do that. Oh, it's, okay, look. We're roping, aren't we? By roping, I mean these 3 digits appear as a set in this box in the same row. And that forces that pattern to repeat. So 8, 5 and 2 are always repeated. 9, so this must be 3, 6 and 9. Can we do that? We cannot put 6 next to 7. We can't put 3 next to 2. And we can't put 9 next to 8. And bar humbug. I don't know if we can do better than that. But there ought to be other things that we can do here by thinking about Sudoku, I would have thought. Possibly with a little bit of 1 and 5-age thrown in. Let's think about this. How do we do this then? Is there a clever way to do it? You see, there could be. Yeah, okay, where does 7 go in box 5? And the answer is not next to 8, because that would create a naughty domino. So 7 goes here, which doesn't get the 7s done, but at least it felt marginally interesting for a moment. Oh, hang on, we got roping in the columns as well. 7, 3, 5, 7, 3, 5. So this is 3, 5, 7. Whoops. And this, therefore, must be 1, 8, 6. Which means this square is not 6, and it can't be a 1 next to a 2. So that becomes 8. This becomes a 1, 6 pair. I'm not sure if I can do that. We can't make this 7 anymore. These squares have got to be 4, 2 and 9. Okay, so this logic is, oh look, 2 and 4 can't go next to 3. So that's a 9, and this is a 2, 4 pair, and you can't put 4 next to 5. So 2 and 4 go in. 1, 6 and 8 over this side. That square's not 8, and it's not 1 because it would repeat in, we'd have 2 marked digits that were 1. This is just ridiculous. It is, how on earth do you discover something like this? You can't put 2 next to 1. This is going to, I think basically now, It feels like we've done it, doesn't it? It feels like we've all but got this puzzle sorted. Because non-consecutives are so powerful once you're able to do almost anything with them at all. I mean, it's sort of 6 there means that's a 9 because it can't be a 6, so that gives us a 3 here and a 6 here, which I thought was going to unwind my 1-4 pair, but doesn't seem to want to. What about 1, 2, 5 and 7 in this row? So let's label all these up and see what that means. These can't be 7. That can't be 1. Bar humbug. Okay, that can't be a 2. Because if it's a 2, it's going to force this to be a 1 and make a naughty domino. So this has got to be 5. And that means 5 lives down here. Probably one thing we could think about doing is, oh look, 5 can't go in a red cell, so that's 5. This column needs 1, 3 and 6, which must be doable. Yeah, where does 6 go in this column? It can't go next to 7 or 5, so 6 can only go here. These squares are a 1, 3 pair, and you can't repeat the 1 in the red cell, so 3 and 1 go in. That becomes 2. This becomes a 1, 7 pair over here. Which sort of makes or begs the question, where does 1 go in column 7 now? It's got to go down here, which means where does 1 go in row 7 now? It's got to go in one of these 2 squares, and therefore must go exactly there. These squares have got to be 3, 4 and 9, and the 3 and the 4 need to be kept apart, so neither this cell cannot be 3 or 4, or it would form a naughty domino. So that's got to be 9. That's got to be 3 because you can't put 4 next to 5, and there we go. And have we got roping? We do. So these squares are 3, 6 and 9, whoops, and these squares are 2, 5 and 8. And can we get that one? Yes, that's got to be 2. It's the only red digit that we haven't placed. And therefore this square now can't be 3 or 6, so that's 9. And therefore that 6 is doing some work. 6 and 3 go in, 8 and 5 go in. Now we can do the 1 and the 7 to stop making naughty dominoes here. We can do the 1 and the 4. We've got roping down the final 3 columns. So these squares have got to be a 1, 1 and 8. Yeah, we've got roping, so I could have seen that way. These squares have got to be 3, 5 and 7. And these squares have got to be 2, 9 and 4. And that one's got to be 9 because it can't be a 2 or a 4 next to a 3. We could have got that digit before. That's the final red digit. So we should find we've got every digit in red. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Perfect. This square here is a 2 in the corner. I've not been looking for 3s in corners, and I haven't got any, so I didn't miss the song. This square here is not a 2 by the power of... Sorry, not a 3 by the power of non-consecutive. That can't be 3 or 5 next to a 4, so that's 7. That's 5. That's 3. That's 5. This is 7. This is 3. Can't put an 8 next to a 7. 1 and 6, this is all going very nicely now. This has got to be an 8, that's got to be a 6, and these squares should be 2, 9 and 4, so that makes that 4, this 2 and that 9. Now, I've no idea, looks good as far as I can tell, I've no idea whether I've breached the rule about non-consecutive dominoes. I don't think I did. It felt logical, and on the basis this puzzle is said to be miraculous, I think this is probably correct. Isn't that absolutely remarkable? I'm going to have to think about this for a few minutes, I think, and reflect upon it, because it feels completely ludicrous that you can have a completely blank Sudoku grid a little bit of indexing, and the whole thing will just fill in. And what was really, really interesting as well was that the path, i.e. the way that the puzzle solved, was really lovely. It didn't feel, what's the right way of saying? It didn't feel artificial. And yet, this grid just exists in nature. So to come up with a rule set that has a natural solve path, which that did seem to have, like, yeah, I had to think about 2s and 3s in order to get these digits restricted, and then think about how the restriction of those digits meant that couldn't be 5 and that couldn't be 9. And that was all lovely logic that just sits within this natural phenomenon. It's absolutely stunning, quite ridiculous. And we've got uber roping going on. We've got roping everywhere. Rows and columns are roping everywhere. Maybe that's just a feature of a non-consecutive grid. I don't know whether that's true or not. Yeah, but that is miraculous. It is undoubtedly miraculous. I look forward to the comments on this one, because I think for some people this will be like, what was the quote from Ramanujan about, mathematics and just beauty. It feels like you're in the presence of the divine when you see something like this, and you realize that numbers can fit together in these sorts of ways. And I think that there will be some amongst our audience who will be blown away, as well as our testers were, as the people who recommended it were, and as I now am. So Farkov and TopAutism take a huge genuflection, because I think you're going to have the world of puzzles applauding you for some time to come. Absolutely remarkable. Let me know in the comments how you got on. Let me know what you think of this. And yeah, let's give these authors some praise. And we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.